Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's seminal work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 39 that Fischer played versus Mikhail Botvinnik in the Varna Olympiad in 1962. How would Fischer fare against the reigning world champion? Stay tuned to find out. Before we jump in, don't forget, smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. Thank you for your support. So Mikhail Botvinnik, what to say, two-time world champion, the so-called patriarch of the Soviet school of chess, one of the most influential and legendary players in chess history. He lost his title to Tal, but reclaimed it in a rematch in 1961. So, during this game in the Olympiad, Fischer was facing the reigning world champion. So, let's jump in and see what happened. Fischer with the black pieces, we have the English opening, and Fischer plays a very flexible move, g6, getting ready to perhaps transpose into the king's Indian defense. And we promptly have a transposition to a d-pawn opening. So we have knight f6, knight c3. Now, if Fischer wants to play the king's Indian defense, which was one of his favorite openings, he would play bishop g7 in this position. And after e4, d6, we would enter the main line of the king's Indian defense. However, Fischer notes in the book that spur of the moment, he decided to play d5, the Grünfeld defense. He said, by the glint in Botvinnik's eye, I could tell he had something prepared for my king's Indian defense. So he decided to go for Grünfeld and try to circumvent Botvinnik's opening preparation. Remember, especially as world champion, Botvinnik had an entire team of grandmasters at his disposal. This is pre-computer, so having a huge team of seconds like this to help you in the opening, to help you during a German analysis, is a huge advantage and something that Fischer never had during his career. So, after knight f3, bishop g7, we have queen b3. This is a really ambitious line in the Grünfeld for white. This is known as the Russian system, or the Russian variation. So after Fischer captures on c4, which is the main move, Fischer castles in this position. Now, this isn't really best because white is able to quickly build a large center, and it's really difficult for black to break it down. At the time, this was kind of the main line, but nowadays we've learned that this move a6 is actually quite good, where you're going to look for a quick expansion, a quick c5, kick this queen around, and get some counterplay going on the queen side and then the center. But Fischer castles, so of course Botvinnik plays pawn to e4, bishop g4, putting pressure on this pawn here. So white reinforces, and we have knight fd7. This is known as the so-called Smyslov variation, and of course Botvinnik had a history with his Russian counterpart, and studied this line extensively in preparation for his encounters with Smyslov. So he was well versed in this line. Bishop e2, knight c6, rook d1. Notice Fischer is trying to chip away at white center, really right now, by trying to provoke some of these pawns forward with his knight play. Whereas Botvinnik is looking to consolidate his center. So this is really the battleground in the Grünfeld, right? Black allows white to establish this really dominant center, and it's really incumbent upon black to try to undermine it. If you can't do that successfully with black in the Grünfeld, you're going to get blown off the board. You're just going to suffocate under the space disadvantage. So knight b6, Fischer continuing his knight play, queen c5, and queen d6. So Fischer connects his rooks, completing development. Botvinnik questions the bishop, which Fischer gives up. Which I think for Fischer is an okay development. First of all, he managed to slightly weaken Botvinnik's pawn structure. And remember, Fischer is the one with the space disadvantage. So trading a pair of minor pieces definitely benefits black. Fischer continues development. And then we finally have d5. Okay, so Botvinnik has been provoked forward with the pawns, which opens up the dark square bishop and also gives the knight a decent square on e5. After knight b5, queen f6, we have the move pawn to f4. And Fischer maintains this was Botvinnik's preparation in this line, was his move pawn to f4. After knight d7, e5, counterattacking the queen, Fischer refuted Botvinnik's line over the board. Just like Capablanca did way back when against Frank Marshall in the Marshall attack. So, I will turn it over to you in this position. Fischer to play. What did Botvinnik miss? Pause your videos and try to find the game continuation. If Fischer doesn't act correctly here, he is just going to get absolutely blown off the board. Okay, and this is the inherent danger of playing an opening like the Grünfeld. This is why I would never recommend this to any of my students. It's a fun opening to play, but it's one that you're just on a knife's edge the whole game. So it suits Fischer's style, though, because he likes to play really dynamic chess, and he's Bobby Fischer. He can find only moves. So, congratulations in this position if you found queen takes f4. Notice both of the queens are on prise. So this is what Botvinnik really missed on this line, according to Fischer. Bishop takes f4 and Fischer regains the queen. Knight c7, rook c8, d6 supporting the knight. We have an exchange, and then at the end of this long line, Fischer is able to grab the pawn on b2. So Fischer has definitely equalized the position. He's up a pawn. Of course, Botvinnik does have some compensation in form of these two bishops and this far advanced passed d-pawn. Very often white in the Grünfeld is able to obtain a central pawn roller, which would lead to a passed pawn. So that's the other battleground in the Grünfeld, especially in these late middle game, early endgame positions, is the passed pawn a strength or is it a weakness? So Botvinnik completes development by castling, connecting his rooks. Fischer looks to blockade this pawn. Rook d5, b6 supporting the knight. Bishop f3, and knight e6. So Fischer's knights the entire game have just kind of been maneuvering. But he's managed to carve out some really nice squares for his knights. Knights are excellent blockading pieces, as this one is on d7, okay, preventing the pawn, but it doesn't limit its scope in any way. And this knight on e6 is standing really well, challenging Botvinnik's bishop pair, also putting pressure on this knight on c7. So Botvinnik exchanges. We have pawn takes, knight c5. The knight finds an excellent outpost on c5. And remember, Fischer's still up a pawn here. Rook e3, pawn to e5. So Fischer trades this pawn and manages to capture the dangerous d-pawn. Botvinnik no longer has the bishop pair. So let's take stock of what's going on in this position. We're at move 29. We're in the endgame. Fischer is up a pawn. Botvinnik definitely has some compensation, mainly in terms of this minor piece imbalance. We have pawns on both sides of the board. So in those types of positions, the bishops generally outperform the knights. So Botvinnik has some compensation here, but Fischer's the one playing for a win here. So let's see if he was able to convert the full point. Botvinnik gets really active with his rook. Rook's on the 7th rank, so Fischer, of course, challenges this rook. You cannot let a rook like this hang in your house. So we have an exchange of rooks. Bishop g4, rook c7. Now, in this position, going into a rook and pawn ending would be very, very dangerous for Botvinnik. He is not ready to challenge Fischer's rook on the 2nd rank. He's not ready to penetrate the 7th rank with his own rook and get counterplay. Fischer's king can quickly come to the center. He's got this 2-on-1 queenside pawn majority. This would most likely be a win for Fischer. So that's why Botvinnik refrains from going into this ending. So as of now, both players just start improving the position of their kings. Just something you should always look to do in the endgame. Once the queens are off, you need to use the king as an attacking piece. Knight c5, so Botvinnik doesn't have the opportunity to exchange minor pieces anymore. Rook e3, rook e7. Botvinnik, of course, has to avoid this exchange. A minor piece ending without the rooks on the board, very difficult to hold. Rook f3, king g7, rook c3, rook e4, bishop d1, rook d4, bishop c2, and king f6. So Fischer's key idea in this position is to start improving the king. He's got great play in the dark squares right now, really rendering this light squared bishop rather ineffective. But here is where Fischer steps wrong. Okay? Pause your videos and have a think. Where should Fischer's king head? Should Fischer's king head to the king side? Or should Fischer's king head to the queen side? Have a think. This is a really critical decision. So in the game, Fischer played king g5, which, as we'll see in later variations, really started losing the thread. It would have been much better for Fischer to play king e5, centralizing the king, and have it eventually support this 2-on-1 majority. Okay, so Botvinnik criticized this move, king g5. The king was stepping the wrong way. It's much less active now. And after king g3, now Fischer goes for simplifications, but here it's much different than the position that we looked at before. Okay, when the king was back on g1, there was a rook on f1, and Fischer's rook would have already been on the d file ready to invade. Here, Botvinnik has consolidated his position somewhat and is able to get very active with his rook, rook a3 and rook e7. So Fischer's up a pawn, but true to rook and pawn endings, it's all about the activity of the rooks and the activity of the kings. And Botvinnik definitely has some compensation now and has great drawing chances. Rook f3, rook c7, a4. Nice move by Botvinnik, just looking to slow down the advance of this majority. Perhaps look to play a5 at an opportune time to undermine the structure. Rook c5, so Fischer tries to prevent this idea, but this allows Botvinnik's rook to the 7th rank. This is why rook and pawn endings are so drawish. It's so difficult to push your own agenda, i.e. advance this 2-on-1 majority, and curtail your opponent's counterplay at the same time. It's just very, very difficult. So Fischer plays rook a5 defending this pawn, but of course Botvinnik can now capture on h7. Rook takes a4, pawn to h4, rook f7, rook g7. Now Fischer has to contend with this weak pawn on g6 in combination with really annoying disruptive checks by the rook. So Fischer's king doesn't really have great shelter from any of the rear checks that Botvinnik can deliver. Rook a1, king f3. Botvinnik's king finds a nice safe square on f3. Fischer starts to advance, And Botvinnik does the same on the king side. So we have this exchange, but of course Botvinnik saw in this position he has rook g5, regaining the pawn, also skewering the king. Oops, misfire there, sorry about that. Here we go. Of course, in this position, Botvinnik should not take this pawn on h5. Okay, the much more important pawn is the one on the queen side. Take that off so that Fischer doesn't have connected outside passers. Fischer advances, but as you can see, we are drifting closer and closer to a draw. In fact, and Botvinnik points this out, and feel free to investigate this on your own, this position is a theoretical draw with these rook pawns, even if this f-pawn is off the board. This f-pawn is of no consequence in the position. Fischer's king is nicely blockading this pawn, and Botvinnik's king is nicely blockading this pawn, and with Fischer's rook stuck in front of this pawn, basically impossible to win. King c7, rook b5, king d6, f6. Botvinnik can just use this f-pawn almost as a decoy. Again, it does not matter. It doesn't change the evaluation of the position whatsoever if this pawn is removed from the board. King e6, rook b6, king f7. Now Botvinnik gets his rook behind Fischer's pawn and basically just begins shuffling. And after rook c6, rook d3, rook a6, a3, and king g1, the players in this position agreed to a draw. Feel free to work this endgame out on your own. You can consult a table base, which will guide you, or any endgame book, but this is a well-known theoretical draw with these rook pawns on the board. So Fischer played a good game. He did a really good job of refuting Botvinnik's opening play. Unfortunately, in the key position, he stepped wrong with his king. Okay, he stepped to the king side with the king, whereas he should have played king e5, centralizing the king. Then the exchange of minor pieces would have been a little bit more advantageous to him, but Botvinnik was just able to get too much activity, and again, with his team of seconds during the adjournment in this game, he was able to find the defense on the rook and pawn ending. Again, just a luxury that Fischer never had during his career. So close encounter. Fischer almost got the win against the reigning world champion, but of course, a draw with the black pieces is a fine result. So, hope you enjoyed this matchup. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. You're not going to want to miss my next installment, which is game number 40. We made it to the 40s, and interestingly enough, Fischer plays a Najdorf versus Miguel Najdorf. You're not going to want to miss that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you soon. Bye.